What's up, football world? I am Bucky Brooks, and this is the Bucky Brooks Show. I am excited to talk to you coming off the heels of that great Super Bowl. It's great if you were either for the Eagles or against the Kansas City Chiefs. Not so great if you were a Chiefs fan, but we can talk about all of that, and we will break down all of that. We'll talk about how the Eagles got it done. We'll talk about how the Eagles are kind of the model franchise when it comes to team building and what the Kansas City Chiefs need to do to bounce back from this very difficult loss in Super Bowl 59. Before we talk about all those things, let's send a shout out to our sponsor, Bet Online, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or first-time bettor, Bet Online is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything from NBA to college basketball to NHL and UFC, Bet Online continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every three-pointer to hat trick, Bet Online has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. Bet Online, the game starts here. And guys, unfortunately, the 2024 regular season, postseason, playoffs, they're all done. But they left us with a fantastic performance in Super Bowl 59. That performance was heavily tilted to the green team, the Philadelphia Eagles. But you have to love to see a team dominate in the biggest game of the year. If you go back to our last show, I talked about this matchup and I talked about the Philadelphia Eagles being the more talented team, and the more talented team needed to show up and play a clean game. If they showed up and played a clean game, their talent disparity, their superior talent advantages would allow them to win over the Kansas City Chiefs. When you looked at the roster, you checked off all the boxes. There were far more blue chip players on the Eagles than on the Kansas City Chiefs. And despite the boogeyman that Patrick Mahomes and company have been for so many teams, the Eagles certainly didn't have that fear factor when they walked into the stadium to take on the Chiefs. You got to remember, this is a team that 2 years ago, Super Bowl 57, they had them dead to rights. They were winning the game. They were dominating the game before a turnover flipped the script and allowed the Kansas City Chiefs to climb back into a game that the Eagles dominated the first half, maybe the first 2.5 quarters. The Eagles were able to parlay that experience and make it where they wanted to leave no doubt in this game. But I think it goes back to not even this year and whatever they had to go through this year to get to this point. I think you have to touch on what happened last year before we can really talk about how all those lessons helped them. And so I'm a believer that there are no real losses, they're only lessons. And the lessons that you glean from those setbacks will help you become a better person, a better team going forward. Last year, the Philadelphia Eagles started out 10-1. We regarded them as arguably the best team in football for the majority of the season until the wheels completely fell off. Lost 5 of the last 6 games, quick early exit. At the end of the season, they had to fire some coordinators, had some other people leave. Like, it was just really a mess. And what happened was, in the losses that led to the dismissals, they were able to become a better coaching staff. Nick Sirianni was able to improve as a head coach, and all of those things really factored into why the team is better. So let's talk about the coordinator hires and why they made a difference. Kellen Moore coming over to the offense after the Brian Johnson experiment. What Kellen Moore did is, we thought that Kellen Moore would come in and basically try and make Jalen Hurts a traditional passer. That's what Kellen Moore has always done. You go back to his time in Dallas, what he did with Dak Prescott, what he did with Justin Herbert with the Chargers. It was all about the passing game, throwing it all over the yard and doing those things. However, Kellen Moore deserves credit for evolving his thinking as he took advantage of the strengths of the Eagles' offense, and he really built this offense around the talents of his quarterback, who's a dual threat, and a dominant running back in Saquon Barkley. In Kellen Moore, what you saw was someone who had only seen the game and called the game in one way, but you saw him expand his playbook, but more importantly, expand his horizons to allow him to call the game differently for someone who prefers to operate in a ground and pound mode. Not that Jalen Hurts can't throw it, but his legs are part of his superpower. And when he utilizes his legs and they're able to use some of those +1 runs to go with what Saquon Barkley can give you as a dominant running back, it really puts the defense in a bind. Ahead of this game coming into Super Bowl 59, we talked about Steve Spagnuolo. The number one thing that the Kansas City Chiefs would do is they would stuff the box. They would blitz the Eagles out of the run game, and they were going to force Jalen Hurts to beat them through the air. I talked about it. When I was playing in Kansas City, we had an old tradition that if Coach Gunther Cunningham, the defense coordinator at the time under Marty Schottenheimer, if he felt like you were the one that had the big matchup or the way that you played was going to be the determining or deciding factor in the game, he would give you the big sombrero. So coming into this game, I said, hey, Jalen Hurts is going to have to wear the big sombrero this week because how he performs as a passer will ultimately determine how the Eagles are able to play in this game. And I looked at it, Jalen Hurts had 72 yards on the ground on 11 carries, which is great. Like, that's just a remarkable stat as it is. But he threw for over 220 yards through the air. He had a bunch of big plays, and they were able to get it done because Steve Spagnuolo couldn't blitz his way out of the hole that he found himself in when his offense couldn't score, and he was having a tough time slowing down a more talented and more powerful Philadelphia Eagle offense. But before we kind of talk about the specifics of the game plan, I think it's really important to continue to go around my conversation about the coordinators, because I talked about Kellen Moore expanding his mind and doing those things. At the same time, Vic Fangio was on the defense working his magic, coming off I won't say a disappointing stint with the Miami Dolphins, but a stint in which all of the philosophies didn't align in that staff meeting room, meaning that Mike Daniels wanted the game to be played a certain way. He wanted to treat the team a certain way. And Vic Fangio is old school, hardened, grizzled. He believes in kind of like that old school process of building up a team, building up players. I've had a college coach would say like, hey man, it's like making grandma's cookies in terms of some of the old school things that you have to do if you want to get the desired result, which is being able to play at a championship level. That is how Vic Fangio operates. He wants it tough. He's on it physical. He wants conditioning. He wants a hardened team that can take on the heavyweights around the league. Vic Fangio's expertise, experience, his direct confrontational style, that was needed in this locker room when you look at the pieces of the puzzle, when you look at the offensive and defensive players that they have. I mean, they have guys that are loud personality, strong personality. And so it takes, and I'll say this because one of my coaches, Crime Dog, Wesley McGriff, who has bounced around college football for a long time, spent some time in the league, but really he's a college coach. He used to always tell me it takes a wolf to coach a wolf, meaning that if you're going to have a team full of strong personality guys that play on the line, they play to the edge, well, you better have some coaches on your staff that know how to deal with that personality because they also are willing to bark back when they've been barked at. The Eagles have that. Vic Fangio brings that, but some of their other coaches also bring it. Now, that is important because eventually we're going to talk about the defensive line and what the defensive line was able to do in this matchup. But all of those things are important from Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio because it leads me to what Nick Sirianni talked about, the core values of the team. In his post-game remarks, he talked about tough, detailed, together. And he talked about that being the mantra of the team, particularly coming off the disappointing season a year ago. They needed to be tough. They needed to be very detailed with how they went about their business, and they needed to play together at all times. Good, bad, no matter what the score is, everyone played together. Play for the name on the front, not the name on the back. If you do those things, you're going to have a chance to win. The toughness shows up in how physical this team was. If you watch that game, there was no doubt that, man, the Philadelphia Eagles were ready to bring it from the jump. They wanted a fist fight. They wanted to tilt the game into a fist fight. They were very comfortable living in that space, living in that world. That world allowed them to run the ball. And I can't say they were most effective running the ball, but their persistence running the ball allowed them to control the game, time of possession, and those things. On the other end, defensively, their toughness at the point of attack allowed them to overwhelm the overwhelm the Kansas City Chiefs offensive line, down after down after down. You think about Jalen Carter, you think about Josh Sweat, you think about Jalen You think about Jalen Hunt, all of those guys were able to kind of impose their will on the opponent. And so that's where the toughness came in. The details, I would say the details, the attention to detail, namely is on the defense. Vic Fangio coming into this game was 0-8 against Pat Mahomes. 0-8. When you face a quarterback 8 times and you haven't beaten them, he is pretty much seeing every pitch that you have in the repertoire. So he has to now anticipate something that is out of the ordinary, out of the box going into it. But Vic Fangio didn't take that approach. Vic Fangio took the approach that I have young guys playing, I have guys that are superior athletes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to simplify it to allow them to play fast. What you saw from the Eagles was a team that played a 4-man rush with an umbrella shell over top of it, behind it, to keep the ball from going over top of the defense. You saw a team that wanted to react to the movement of the quarterback, steal second on his throws, and really close the gap, rally and tackle, and force this team to nickel and dime the ball down the field. To play that way, you not only have to have so much attention to detail when it comes to how you're playing everything, how you buttoned up, how you dot your I's and cross your T's, all of that. You have to all that button up to deal with what you're dealing with, because the team on the other side, they'll do all kinds of creative stuff to test your rules when it comes to that. This team dominated with a 4-man rush and umbrella coverage the entire game. I mean, 60%, over 65% of their snaps there. 4-man rush, no simulated pressure, just, hey, you 4, go hunt, we'll figure it out in the back end. No one really attacks the Kansas City Chiefs like that. Everyone is so afraid of Pat Mahomes that if they back up, he'll dink and 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 find his way all the way down the field. So in playing this umbrella coverage with a 4-man rush, Vic Fangio was basically playing a one-on-one game with Patrick Mahomes. And he was saying, I am not going to allow you to throw it over the top of the defense. You are going to have to throw the ball short, and they're going to have to make plays and run the ball. Well, once you did that, you now put this game kind of in like an even situation where you don't have the big play opportunities from the Kansas City Chiefs. So now they must drive the length of the field without A-plus playmakers in the backfield and on the perimeter. And you allow the Philadelphia Eagles to be able to be very, very comfortable offensively, running the ball, controlling the game, and doing those things. Now that we've talked about the coordinators, let's talk about how the coordinators implemented their respective game plans. I told you about Kellen Moore and the growth and what he wanted to do and how he came in thinking that he could play a certain way. But then reality told him, nah, we're just trying to win the game. So what do we need to do to win the game? And I would say he deserves applause because he did exactly what was needed to be done to win the game. So let's talk about the run game. This is the Eagles team that was like, man, 1 or 2 in the league, rushing. They're running down people's throats. No one can stop the monster that is Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts. The two of these guys together are a dynamic duo. They put a stress on your defense because like they can do it in a variety of ways. Traditional handoffs, quarterback leads, design quarterback runs, whatever you want to see, you can get it. Saquon Barkley was held to 57 yards on 25 carries. 25 carries, 57 yards. They didn't let him drop the entire night. Spags was blitzing from everywhere and, hey, get the quarterback. Get the running back on the way to the quarterback. That's what they talked about. Flying up the field. So Saquon didn't really have a chance. When we think about Hurts, the reason why he had a chance because all eyes are on 26. And one of the things that we have to account for when you have a mobile quarterback, he'll pull it at any time because this is what he's been doing since high school. He understands it. He loves it. He knows how to stay away from the mic, but he is going to relish the opportunity. He relished the opportunity to do some of these things on the ground where we had the dual threat stuff, the design quarterback runs, Saquon Barkley running in between the tackles. And even though Saquon was not very successful, the rushing attempts matter. When I look at the stat sheet, man, the Philadelphia Eagles had 44 rushing attempts. 135 yards. It's only 3 yards a carry. That's not a great day, but 45 rushing attempts allows you to control the clock, control the game, and set the pace for the opponent. Jalen Hurts had the rushing touchdown on a tush push, very creative, but it was his ability to run on key downs as a scrambler as opposed to a design quarterback runner that came back to bite the Kansas City Chiefs in the tail. He evaded, eluded, escaped multiple situations to get free, and he did it while managing the game correctly. So when I mean Jalen Hurts managed the game correctly, when you looked at him, they started draining the clock from the beginning. It was really important for them that they played the game to win, while really staying kind of conservative to like, hey, let's just not give it away. And when I think about the ground game and what they were doing, it was a combination of Saquon Barkley leading up in the hole, Jalen Hurts finding space on those leads, but also Jalen Hurts finding space on those scrambles. When we think about the scrambles and how he was able to get conversions, it now puts the Chiefs in another bind because they have all eyes on 26. They're trying to double team A.J. Brown to eliminate the one-on-ones. Devontae Smith has proven that he can hurt you. And so you just have all of these holes sprouting up as you're in the dam. You're trying to plug the holes with your finger. You just don't have enough. I felt that's how Kansas City felt in dealing with this offense. Offensive line is too good. The playmakers on the outside are hard to cover. They still can run the ball and control the narrative when it comes to all of that. Just a lot to deal with when you talk about their running game. But it extends beyond the running game because this game, and I said, we talked about Jalen Hurts having to wear the big sombrero. He wore the big sombrero because he had to throw the ball in the air. And even though the stat line will say, okay, he completed a fair amount of passes, he was, as I'm looking at the stats right now, he ended up completing 17 to 23, 210 yards, two tutties, and an interception. And when I say that, it's significant because you had 210 passing yards. You had 5 completions that would be regarded as explosive plays, 20 yards or more. 5 of them. Big plays, too. Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, Jahan Dotson, all getting a piece. Bang, bang, bang. That opened up the field. So now you're worried because, like, man, can I leave this safety alone or do I need to kind of keep him back? If I keep him back, man, they're gutting us with the run game. That's the dilemma that the Philadelphia Eagles have always wanted to create. They wanted to be able to run the football, challenge you to come up with a plan to stop A.J. Brown, come up with a plan to stop Saquon Barkley, and then knock you out with big shots to A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. When they're able to do that, everyone eats, everyone's happy, and it's great. Everyone gets along, and they see it for what it is. When they're unable to stick to the script or stay with the formula, like they have to run it more, they have to throw it more, like that's all bad. That's not what we're talking about. And so it's just really important that when we talk about the running game, marrying it up with the passing game so that it's complementary. The Eagles have done that under Kellen Moore, and it's one of the reasons why they've been busting the clock of late. 5 explosive plays, big touchdowns. One of the reasons why he's really, really one of the reasons why this offense is really, really good and why Kellen Moore is really, really sought after. Really good job of scripting the play, elevating the players where you made it players over plays. And then the final part of it is managing the game in a winning fashion. Checked off all the boxes in those categories. That is why he is doing that is why the Eagles have done what they've been able to do in winning Super Bowl 59. Now let's go to the defense because I would say the defense is probably the most fun to watch of all the units that played in the game. Vic Fangio came in the game intent on rushing 4, playing umbrella coverage behind it. The reason why he wanted to rush 4, because when you only rush 4 members, don't bring an extra member, you have more bodies in coverage. They were still very aware of the big play potential of the Chiefs, and they wanted to park the safeties and the corners in the parking lot, eliminate the deep throws, and force them to throw it underneath. You saw it. I mean, almost 65% of their plays, their passing plays, they were in some form of quarters. They were bringing a 4-man rush. Some of that is straight traditional rush, come off the edge and bull rushing back into the quarterback. Other parts of that is a mixture of static disguise with late moving coverage down the line. And the thing about that is there's a lot to that, spinning safeties down and doing all that. But at the end of the day, the goal, stop the run, keep the ball in front if you're in a passing game. You do those 2 things, you have a chance. When I look at Fangio and the coverage, I understand why he's so confident that he was able to play that and that this game was the perfect opportunity for him to get back to who he is as a play caller. When I think about the defense, I'm looking at these numbers. The defense finished with 6 sacks, 11 quarterback hits, 2 picks. 6 sacks, 11 quarterback hits, 2 picks. That's crazy, ridiculous production for a team that doesn't necessarily have like a ton of marquee players, but guys that are emerging. When I look at this team on defense, it stood out to me. Josh Sweat, Milton Williams, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Jalen Hunt all had sacks. They got it done. They were relentless with their pressure. Sometimes it was games. Sometimes it was organic screens and picks that create opportunities. But regardless, they knocked the quarterback around. It's the first time that I can admit that I've never seen Pat Mahomes rattled in game by the pressure, but he was rattled in this one. I never could see him kind of like, not necessarily, just kind of just throw it around and then go back in. Like he was kind of good, didn't want to really deal with it. I was like, ooh, okay, that's a little different when it comes to what it is that they were trying to accomplish, particularly up front. So when I look at this pass rush plan, what the Eagles wanted to do is they wanted to cage rush Pat Mahomes. They wanted to keep Pat Mahomes in the pocket. They wanted to make sure that he had to throw from the well. They wanted to limit his big plays. Their athleticism up front overwhelmed the Kansas City Chiefs at the front line. When you think about Josh Sweat dominating Joe Thuney, it's because he was longer, he was more athletic. And Thuney, Joe, he's an all-pro caliber guard, can't play tackle because his arms are too short. So if you notice, when you looked at the game, you saw them put their hand right in his chest, walk him all the way back on a bull rush, and then work their hands to get free on the quarterback. What you saw inside is you saw some natural games that weren't necessarily designed, but they kind of made themselves into natural pickers because they played hard, they picked a side, and they dominated. Jalen Carter in particular, Milton Williams also, they dominated inside, made it easy for the guys on the outside to get after it. The other thing that they were able to do is they were able to play fast and freely because they were faster and more athletic than Pat Mahomes. First time I ever seen Pat being run down. Most of the time he scoots and skates and dodges and runs around and has success. Now against the Eagles' team speed overwhelmed the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think everyone was surprised by that, which is why we might have seen the Chiefs lose their cool, lose some of their composure when it came to how they were able to play. The front line set the tone. They whipped the guys up front. They didn't have an answer, and there was nothing that Andy Reid could look in the call sheet or the playbook to offset the pressure, the relentless pressure that they were putting on the backfield. But it's not just what they were able to do at the front line that mattered because, look, man, they knocked them around. They got home. They had more blue chippers in first round, all of that. All of that was effective. All of that is why they're able to do it. The draft and development plan, the redshirt year policy that they have, all of that stuff worked out. The reason why it was so important for them to be able to do it, because now it allows 7 guys in coverage to keep their eyes on number 15. That matters not only for when he scrambles, but when he attempts to throw, they're going to get quicker jumps on the ball. This young secondary, as we think about a young secondary playing behind a ferocious pass rush that accounted for 6 sacks and 11 quarterback hits, the secondary just need to keep the ball in front and look for tips and overthrows to make plays. Or early in the game, lo and behold, wasn't a tip, bad throw. Cooper DeJean not only makes a pick, but he takes it to the crib to open up the game. And his awareness was part of a performance by a secondary where they knew exactly what they were going to do and what they wanted to take away. So that was a great attention to detail. So we've always talked about toughness, talked about tough, detailed, and together. So the tough part is the physicality of the unit, but particularly at the line of scrimmage. So we saw how the toughness led to a detailed plan in the back end that helped him get the result as a group. Well, the detailed plan in the back end is we're going to play just quarters. And playing quarters is 4 across, divide the field in just 20 quarters. Like every cornerback outside, they get outside quarters. Safeties get inside quarters. You play it, keep everything in front, pass everything off. It's like a flag football defense. But what they're able to do is they can match up. They can do some different things underneath where it neutralizes a lot of what you want to do as a static style offense, as you prefer an offense that's pretty static. That's what I mean. Meaning it doesn't move around, doesn't do a lot of stuff. You kind of want to make it happen without doing a lot of complexity. So what I was saying is a static defensive style, not offense style, where you want to just line up like toy soldiers and play. That's how the Eagles want to play with Vic Fangio. They want to line up. They don't want to move around a lot. They want to play like toy soldiers, and they just want to out-execute you as opposed to out-scheme you and trick you. That's what they were able to do. Coming into the game with the Kansas City Chiefs, as I looked at their personnel, they didn't have anyone that necessarily scared you as the number 1 receiver. However, they did have some speed players in Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy that could get past you if you fell asleep on the job. So the goal was to keep everything in front, don't allow the big plays to happen, and see if their patience, the Chiefs' patience and discipline, would enable them to drive the ball the length of the field on 5 and 6 yard plays. Can't do that. That's not who they are. They're a team that wants to splash. They love to splash. The Eagles were committed to taking away the splash plays. More importantly, the Eagles were committed to making life hard on Pat by getting after him relentlessly, but not putting all the other stuff on the show. So you love that part of it. And it played out the way that you wanted it to play out, because when you had zone coverage, vision on the quarterback, eyes on the ball, seeing it released, you not only have an opportunity to steal a step or two on a jump to break up or intercept a pass, but you always flow in and fly into the ball in case someone catches it. Everyone is there to kind of finish off and pop, 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 multiple tackles on the thing. That works when you have a fast defense that's more athletic because of the people that they brought in. We are seeing how it worked with Cooper DeJean in the pick. Brendan Mitchell makes some plays. C.J. Gardner-Johnson was all over the field bringing the energy. All that stuff helped because you not only got the 6 sacks, you got the 11 quarterback hits, you had a forced fumble, you had an interception, and you had a bunch of batted balls by guys in bright coverage. You just don't see this happen to the Kansas City Chiefs. The Philadelphia Eagles were more talented, and that enabled them to be able to get after it in that fashion. Last thing when it comes to the Eagles, the game plan and the overall execution that we saw from them. Nick Sirianni in his post-game presser talked about tough, detailed, and together. And so a lot of times when we talk about complementary football, we miss what that really means. What complementary football means that I call the game as an offensive coordinator to complement what we want to do defensively. In the kicking game, we do what we do to complement what you do on offense and defense to ensure that we, as a kicking unit, not negatively impacting the squad. When I looked at the way that this team played, the adversity from last year that led to them really establishing these core tenets, tough, detailed, together, you saw it all work out. Toughness in football is defined by the running game, being able to run the ball, stop the run. They did that by all accounts. Detail, the way that you play defense, the way that you finish, the way that everyone understands what they're doing, particularly in a Vic Fangio style defense, that work. Together, marrying all 3 units together to make sure that everyone is willing to do their job. They don't worry about credit, and they don't worry about, hey, my numbers on this given week. If I have to sacrifice some numbers this week, I'll get it back on the back end because I would rather win than be a disruptor because I haven't gotten what I wanted in that. The togetherness worked not only in the chemistry, but how they tied the game plan together to make sure that they were able to play winning football in Super Bowl 59. Now, we've talked about the Eagles, and we talked about how all of those things work, tough, detailed, together. Let's talk about the Kansas City Chiefs quickly and what it means and how they go from here. Obviously, a disappointing game for them, a game in which their biggest warts were exposed. The offensive line has been an issue the entire year. They played musical chairs there. You can't do that against a dominant defense, and we saw why. They didn't have enough able bodies to slow down what the Philadelphia Eagles could throw at them at the front line. The endless wave of pass rushers coming in and out the game, the relentlessness of those pass rushers who were in the game, the superior talent of the pass rushers and D linemen who were in the game, just swallowed up the Kansas City Chiefs. And, I kind of liken it early. I said, the Kansas City Chiefs are like Mike Tyson when he got knocked out from Buster Douglas and they were stumbling around getting the mouthpiece. That was my initial reaction to seeing the Chiefs that look around dazed and confused like they're overwhelmed. But I'm going to give you another Tyson analogy, and I'm going to say that it's very similar to the way that Tyson responded to when he was fighting Evander Holyfield. And very early in the fight, he recognized that he didn't have anything for Evander Holyfield. So what did he do? He bit his ear. When I look at the Kansas City Chiefs, we saw some penalties early from them that normally is not their thing. I think very early in the game, they realized that they joined in and they're facing a buzzsaw. They're facing a team that is bigger, faster, more athletic than them, and a team that is really focused. And I think that realization made them get out of character when it came to their lack of emotional control and stability. Sometimes you can be so overwhelmed by the people that you're facing that you just throw your hands up and you cave to the pressure in the moment. I would say that Kansas City caved to the moment a little bit because some of their best players didn't show up and make plays. Travis Kelce with some drops, DeAndre Hopkins with some drops, with other guys with some things that could have sustained drives, not able to get it done. And when you have a performance like this, it's really a blessing in disguise because it allows you to really evaluate your team for what it really is. If they won, you're probably more likely to go status quo. Maybe you tweak, you don't do a full rebuild. Now that you've lost, you got to look at the worst. You got to have some hard conversations about who's coming back and how you need to play. When I look at the Kansas City Chiefs, O-line issues really hurt them. You weaken two positions by moving Joe Thuney out wide to tackle. You got to move him back to his natural spot because he is an all-pro player there. So that means in the draft free agency, you got to find someone who can man that spot and man it without a lot of help. Is there anyone out there? I don't know, but that is what you're looking at when it comes to trying to fix this offensive line. You need a number one wide receiver. Rashee Rice was hurt, not available to play. Maybe he comes back and he assumes that role. But if not, man, you got a bunch of guys all over kind of vying for that spot, and which one is going to take it over? If you ask me now, I have no idea who could occupy that. I do know that I like the combination of Xavier Worthy and Marquise Hollywood-Brown. Didn't see Brown for the most part, but you saw their speed and how it could complement one another when they're on the same page. That would be intriguing to me what they do at that position. Juju Smith-Schuster, DeAndre Hopkins, people have talked about Cooper Kupp and all those coming over. Those are fine additions. They can find a way to make it work, but much better group, much better unit that you're dealing with in terms of like Xavier and Hollywood Brown, trying to figure out which one of those guys can be the number one and how to continue to expand out what they want to do in the passing game. Running back. Don't have a lead running back. I love Kareem Hunt. I like Isaiah Pacheco, but neither of these guys scare anybody when it comes to breaking down the Chiefs. They don't have anyone that can take it the distance. They don't have anyone who really is a capable and consistent 100-yard gainer. Well, if you don't have that, defenses don't have to change. They can play pass first, run second because you don't have the ability to threaten them. If the Chiefs want to go next level, they got to get a next level running back to put beside Pat Mahomes, someone that can make you pay when you go one-on-one. Someone can catch you down the field and do all these things that make it really, really difficult to do. Well, if you don't have an elite running back, it makes it hard, particularly with a declining tight end that is still the focal point of the offense. You just don't have enough blue chip dudes. They have to figure out how they can get more blue chippers in those marquee spots to help the quarterback out. And I know that Pat is going to do that, but when you have O-line issues, you don't have clarity in terms of who's your number one receiver, and you lack an elite back, it's hard to win games in this league. So to their credit, the fact that they were sitting there in Super Bowl 59 is really about Andy Reid and the players buying into one another, regardless of what the scheme was saying, whether it was working or not. It also suggests to me that in a game in which they were really exposed and it was a blowout, now you got to be honest with yourself, because the worst thing to do is play a close game knowing that you have to do a complete rebuild. In this one, they know. We need to fully rebuild it on offense. We need to give Pat Mahomes an opportunity to go score points. We got to surround him with more dynamic playmakers. And then once we do that, we can find out a way to enhance our offense to complement our defense and to win games. But it's something that they certainly have to tackle in the offseason. And now that we're in the offseason, we will be around to talk about not only them, the Kansas City Chiefs tackling it, we'll talk about how the Philadelphia Eagles need to attack the offseason as they attempt to make a back-to-back run. But until then, you need to rate, review, subscribe to the podcast, listen to all the cool stuff that we're doing at the Believe Network. Make sure you subscribe to the show, because now that we put the season to bed, all of our focus and attention will be on the draft, free agency, and how your favorite team can get better. Make sure you put a little thumbs up when you have an opportunity to rate the show. This is the Bucky Brooks Show. I'm Bucky Brooks, and I will talk to you next time.